Well, our local YMCA, I did a little garden in that area, in the playground area where just planted some flowers and we did like a mural from the children's book, Let Your Heart Light Shine. We did that on the wall there and just made it like a cute, inviting little place for kids. It was one of the things that I found helped me too, was actually getting out and planting. And like you said, watching things grow. And then again, when I go and see things come back up in the spring, I think that's another way it helps you heal. Because like you were saying, you start with a seed and then you see the flower bloom. And then often, the perennials you'll see come up again. And that's healing, I think, as well, to know that like life comes back.
Hey friend, welcome to the Growing Kindness Podcast. I'm your host, Deanna Kitchen, founder of the Growing Kindness Movement. This is a place where we grow together, learning to root our lives in kindness, connection, and community. If you've ever wished the world felt a little softer, a little more neighborly, or if you're craving stories that remind you that goodness still grows, you're in the right place. Together with our guests, we'll share stories of generosity and community, proof that even the smallest acts of kindness, from growing and giving cut flowers to everyday acts of care, can change lives and connect us in powerful ways. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. Welcome back to the podcast. Today's conversation is a tender one. I am honored to be joined by Shannon Morris today. Shannon is a mother who, after the loss of her daughter Fallon, has found a way of moving forward through kindness and acts of kindness. And we're honored to get to have you here with us, Shannon, today and get to hear your story and hold space for your story. And you and I have had the privilege of having some conversations, just the two of us, and I have walked away from them feeling hopefully reminded of the power of kindness and what it can carry us through, even through some of the hardest experiences that we can face.
Well, thank you for having me. Fallon was our eldest daughter. She was 24 and traveling home from New York City, and there was a snowstorm. She was in a car accident, so we lost her that day. And one of the ways I have found that has helped me is to carry on who she was. And she was just such a kind, sweet person that is one of the things that really I found helps me is helping others and showing acts of kindness, because that's who Fallon was as a person. And we had originally, her and I had talked about starting a website because she was living in New York City and just out of college. And one of the things we said we could do on the side would be like a website. And with her being in the city, she could shop and we could find cool things to sell. And so I had already established the name, which was Sœurs Gray, which Sœurs meaning sisters in French, and Gray for my son Grayson. I have 3 girls and a boy. Before the accident happened, we had just came up with the name. So it was just something we had just talked about. So after all this happened, really you're just numb in the beginning. So you really can't, it just doesn't feel real. But one of the things I thought I have to do is follow through with what we talked about. But instead of making it so much a website, I made it more about Fallon. So then we also did the Shannon Morris Foundation, which is connected to the Sœurs Gray. We do a perfume named Fallon, which is sold at a local spa. It was actually a friend of mine who has a shop in Bedford, PA, that mentioned doing a perfume for her. And I loved that idea. So that's how that came about. I came across your website, The Growing Kindness, which I thought was just awesome, where you give you grew flowers and give flowers. And so that's one of the things I've also incorporated when I do things in honor of Fallon, that we give flowers and we attach a little pass it on kindness card in honor of her. So that's been something we did at college campuses. She attended Penn State, so we have an endowment for her there. So we try to do kindness things for the students. And then I did a children's storybook inspired by Fallon, of course, about kindness and the importance of empathy and mindfulness for kids. We did an outdoor permanent walk where they can walk through as they read the book. It's in permanent posts there. And we also did flowers there, and I'd love to expand on that and add, kids growing gardens and things like that.
Oh, Shannon, you're doing a lot. I think that all of us, who have either navigated through a loss and grief like you have, or have faced life-changing moments, you want to hope and believe that on the other side, that's how you'll carry forward a legacy. And this is just such a beautiful picture of a life well honored through kindness. Shannon, you mentioned at the beginning that the grief just felt numb. And any of us could only imagine, especially I think a mother, what that experience could have felt like and been like. Did doing things in honor of Fallon, was that the thing that helped you move through that grief and forward? Or was this something that came later as the grief began to subside?
Well, I don't think there's any time limit on grief, obviously. It could hit me today like it hit me 5 years ago, but you learn how to carry it. You don't get over. You learn how to carry that grief. Because I think a lot of people, I had a friend that lost a son and she came to me and said, when does this when does this pain stop? And I said, I hate to say this to you, but it doesn't. I think you learn how to carry it. You learn how to live with carrying their spirit forward with you. I really do believe that our children, our loved ones that we lose, I believe they're still with us. I mean, in a different way, of course. It's sad you can't physically hug them or see them, but I truly feel in my heart that she is with me, guiding me. I don't know why what happened, but Fallon would always say things to me like she didn't think she was going to get old. And it was almost like some people know. I mean, I don't think she knew what was going to happen, obviously, that day, but I think she knew she wasn't going to be one of those people, growing old here on earth. So I sort of feel like she was an old soul. She seemed to know what was important before most people, only being 24, yet she seemed to really know what's important in life. And a lot of people in their 20s don't quite get that, but all her friends, they all said how she made them feel special and how kind she was. I never really heard Fallon say a bad word about anyone. She always handled people with such grace and kindness and understanding. So I think basically what I've done is just thought I have to try to be more like she was. That's how I honor her. So, I mean, have I had days where I don't want to get out of bed? Yeah, of course. But then I think, how is that honoring my child? How is that honoring my other children that are still here that, they're hurting as well? So we're all going to die at some point. That's so sad. And it definitely shouldn't be a child or a young person that had so much life yet to give. But, we have to remember that life is precious, and the stuff we often worry about really, I think it is about the simple things. And that was something Fallon always said too, is keep it simple. I think that's so true. She just wanted to enjoy her time here. And I look back now and I think of all the times I sort of, missed but she was just that light, that joyful spirit. So I just try to remind myself now, if I start taking something too serious, how would Fallon have handled this? Or how would, and I try to be more like she was. She was better than I am, and I'm just trying to be more like her. So I think our kids teach us a lot too.
Truly. I think every parent can agree in that, holding that dream for our own children, that they will become more of who they are and more, in that than we are, that every generation moves forward with more hope and more generosity and more compassion. And it sounds like Fallon in every way embraced that and moved through the world with just a tenderness and a kindness.
Yeah, she was just naturally, that's who she was. I have to honor that. I think that's why it was really important to me to do acts of kindness. And that's what helps me get through. I mean, when I'm helping someone else feel better, that also helps me feel better. As you know, that's part of it. I mean, I guess sometimes it's a bit of a selfish thing as well, because we're doing it, of course, to help someone else, but we're also helping ourselves in turn. I think if everybody realized that, the world would be a lot better off.
Truly. And I think I have felt the very same thing. Some of the seasons I've walked through in life and I cannot say they were in any regard to the same as what you have navigated through. But I have found that same experience of, when I was dealing with anxiety, it was like going and doing for others kind of helped me get out of my own head. It brought back joy. I can understand that fully. And there were times where sometimes we would go to long-term care to share flowers, and I almost felt like the same, like, am I doing this for them or am I doing this for me? Because I know I desperately need this today. I know this is going to make me feel better. And yet when you look at the bigger picture, that when, we talk about, especially in motherhood, when we're healthier, more whole parents, then we have so much more to give to our children. And I think that as humans, when we're doing things that are helping us to heal and to feel joy and a sense of purpose and belonging and a hit of oxytocin, like those things help us to be better individuals. And that in turn helps us to show up for our friends, our families, our communities in a way that's helpful and authentic. And so really, I don't think we can call it selfish, right?
Well, I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be here to help each other. And I think, and like you said, the kids and everything have so much anxiety now, and yet they have more probably than ever as far as, they're on social media, the things they worry about. It happens to all of us, but when you really sit down and think about it, we're all pretty lucky how we live here. There's, of course, parts of the world that don't get to live like we do. But I think when, we need to start bringing some humanity back. It feeds us, I think, when we help others, and in turn we're feeding, it helps both sides.
There's a reciprocity to it. It isn't just a take and it isn't just a give. It's mutual. And I think that's why it's so powerful. It's simple, but powerful. Shannon, you mentioned earlier that, helping your other children navigate through this grief has also been, a huge part of your life in this season. Can you share more about how the work that you're doing, how that's impacted you as a family?
Well, honestly, I don't think we talk about it a whole lot, maybe like we should. We have, of course, I still talk about Fallon. As far as sitting down, talking about our grief with one another, I can't say we've done that a whole lot. I think the main thing is showing by example is, they see me, trying to move forward, carrying Fallon's memory. And I know they see it. They're all great kids, and, they're just finding their way, I'm sure, too. And I think there's certain things we can't really help someone else through. I think there's certain things we have to work through on our own. I hope they all know I'm here if they ever want to talk about it, but I think we've all sort of found our own little ways and paths to deal with our grief, which, I try to be respectful of theirs and them of mine. And I just think the main thing is just that they know they're loved, and that how much, their sister is still loved and carried forward. And I'm sure they all do as well. Like even in their everyday, just knowing Fallon was, I think, enough for all of us to know that she was such a special person. It's important to carry forward her values and her joy. She was a lot of fun, and just a good, kind person that I know they'll all carry her with them. So I definitely feel like she's still being carried forward with us and still guiding all of us. I feel like we have a guardian angel sort of looking out for all of us, and guiding our way. So I think with grief too, like you had said, something I thought about when you were talking earlier is when we start feeling bad for ourselves, that's a downward spiral to get on. I think it's okay to feel sad, but I think, who are we really feeling bad for when we lose someone? We're feeling bad for ourselves, because the person that passed on has now I like to believe, crossed over, and they're at peace. So it's us that are left here thinking about how much we miss them. So I think if we tend to focus too much on our sadness, it sometimes then will just, I think, take us down. I think it's okay to be sad, but I also think it's like you sort of have to make yourself get up and do something and honor that person that you're missing. I guess that's something that I try to do. But, we all have our moments and that's okay. It's just, I think one of the things I've tried to do and think about is, okay, how can I honor my daughter and how can I carry her goodness and kindness forward?
And then in doing that, you truly have created a legacy of kindness and are sending out these really beautiful ripples of kindness in the world. And the really lovely thing I often think about ripples and seeds when it comes to kindness, because I think they're both really beautiful analogies for the way that it moves into and forward in the world. You think about a flower that goes to seed, and those seeds spread a little farther than where that flower originally grew. And they plant even more flowers, and then those grow and go to seed and spread a little farther. And so it's just this continuation and this multiplication of kindness. And then the same, when we drop a pebble into a pond, the ripples just move out and they'll keep going and going and going until they bump into something. And sometimes if you throw in, several stones in a pond, the ripples will start to intersect each other as well. And I love to think about kindness like that we don't really necessarily get to see the end, where the ripple stops moving. But there are moments where we do get to see the growth and the impact directly. And it's such a reassurance of that process that what we see is just a little picture of actually the unseen work of kindness that's continuing to move forward. And I think it's a gift even for myself to get to know Fallon just a little bit through your story and through your work that you're doing.
Thank you. Well, you had mentioned, I think, when you said about the ripple effect, I think how we're all connected. I mean, what we do to other people it affects more than just that person, good or bad. So I think we have to remember that too, is we're all connected. People are just, how we treat others does matter. It seems minor, but it's major. And it can be simple little things. Yeah.
Absolutely. You are doing both small, beautiful things and bigger things through Fallon's foundation, ways of spreading kindness. And we talked a little bit about that kind of in the opening, but can we jump in and just talk a little bit more about that now? One of the things that you and I have discussed is that flowers have become one of the many ways that you have been spreading kindness in Fallon's honor. Can you share more about those experiences? Maybe just kind of how they came together and how the inspiration came to you and how those played out in your community?
Yeah. Well, our local YMCA, I did a little garden in that area, in the playground area, where just planted some flowers, and we did like a mural from the children's book, Let Your Heart Light Shine. We did that on the wall there and just made it like a cute, inviting little place for kids. It was one of the things that I found helped me too, was actually getting out and planting. And like you said, watching things grow. And then again, when I go and see things come back up in the spring, I think that's another way it helps you heal. Cause like you were saying, you start with a seed and then you see the flower bloom. And then often, the perennials you'll see come up again. And that's healing, I think, as well, to know that like life comes back. It has a full cycle. But so one of the things I did find that helped was planting. We did the storybook walk, which we also were planting flowers. And like I said, I'd like to expand on that in the future and have kids there gardening and things like that. And also handing out the flowers with the kindness cards. Yeah, nature, flowers have definitely played a role in helping with grief as well. So, and acts of kindness, because I don't know if you have that I had sent you. I forwarded to you through email, and Fallon even had the poem about the lovely bud. And when she was 15, her English class read Tuesdays with Maury, and then they were to write how they'd like to be remembered. And I remember thinking, like, what teacher would have these 15-year-olds write a story about how they want to be remembered? But I found Fallon's. It was amazing. And she just said, I don't have it here on me, a copy of it, but I made copies for myself and my children, because Fallon laid out how she wanted to be remembered. And it was basically her just saying how she knows everyone would be sad, but she would want us to move on and move forward and be happy. It was just amazing that that I found that in her room. afterwards. Like, and that was 10 years later. I mean, she wrote it when she was 15 and she was almost 25 when she had her accident. So the fact that I have that from her, so I did reach out to her English teacher and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how much this helped me. And I remember at the time thinking, what a weird assignment to give these kids at 15.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It feels, maybe morbid to say, like, what do you want?
Yeah, it was a little morbid. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh. And then I just sort of forgot about it. And then I had been in Fallon's room just, going through things. And, I do ask for signs and I do believe in signs. I believe we get them. And I came across that paper. It was just amazing to read. She had a poem on there too. The lovely bud, so young, so fair, called off by earthly doom, just came to show how sweet a flower in paradise could bloom. And she had that at the top of her paper, which I, of course, made a copy of and have it with her picture on the back. And it's strange how she said in the beginning, it's a tragedy that Fallon Morris died so young. Like she was writing this, and like so I find this, and I'm just like, this is incredible. She just said too about she was a happy girl who loved to laugh and goof around, and she loved her family and friends. Like it just goes on. I mean, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it was just almost like she wrote it to me, but yet she wrote it 10 years earlier. Things like that, like I feel like she knew I'd need it.
I think you mentioned at the beginning that it was as if Fallon had this sense of knowing that life was going to be short and lived it very intentionally and kindly and with such light and tenderness. And yet, and you also mentioned, like, our reality is we all will be leaving this earth, and how beautiful then to have lived those years, and perhaps even the process of writing that down and setting that intention of how do I want to be remembered helped Fallon to walk through the days that she did have with intentionality and a sense of purpose about who she was becoming, so that that's who she would be remembered as. And I know I actually, it's not shocking to me that the act and the process, only because years ago, like essentially writing your own obituary, years ago, a business mentor had suggested that if you really want to clarify your goals and your purposes and your intentions, sit down and write as if you've lived 80, 90 years, whatever it is that you think it will be. And what will be the things that you will be remembered for and remembered as, and how would you want people to, what's your legacy? What are you leaving? And so my husband and I sat down and did that. And it feels very, very strange, in that process. And yet on the other side of having a very crystal clear picture of these are the things that actually matter most to me. And then having the ability then to filter decisions and actions through that lens of, does this align with who I want to become and who I want to be remembered as? And how beautiful that Fallon's teacher gave her that gift to walk through that process. And you do wonder, how much did that impact how she navigated through her days? But clearly she did so with purpose and intentionality to be a kind, generous, giving young lady. And especially, we all were in our late teens and early 20s, and being thoughtful of others and being, just what you shared about Fallon and the way that she navigated through her friendships, that she made everybody feel seen. And that's not something that just happens by accident. That's someone being intentional and purposeful about wanting to show up for others in this world in that way. So it's really beautiful to see that what she sowed, and then this as the flower seed, that's what's continuing to be sown, through her legacy and through your foundation.
Yeah, there was a poem. It was like an Indian proverb. I think it was on my bio for the book that I had enjoyed. So I copied it there. And it was something like the seeds we sow today are the flowers of tomorrow. And I think of children sort of that way as well. Like, we're all going to reap what we sow type thing. Obviously, there's bad things that happen to good people all the time, but I'm saying, like you said, what we carry forward, what we get from those seeds, those flowers, and what we choose to carry forward is really important.
It really is. And I love what you mentioned about the process of gardening and how healing it is to us. And part of it is in that experience of watching the life cycle and the hope. We're moving through the darker days of winter now, but the hope that is ahead, and that those just tiny little buds are a reminder to us of that it is a natural process to let go in so many ways in our lives, whether that's a loss of a loved one or the end of a chapter of our lives, or a season or whatever it is. But then there's also this renewing and new life, that is coming. And there's hope that we can hold on to in that. And I definitely, it's been my honor and privilege to get to walk along and hear so many stories from those who have navigated a loss and use gardening as a tool to help them through that because of just what you named, that process of not only just being outside, our hands in the soil, our face in the sun, but also to see that life cycle and that renewal happening, right before our eyes, and the hopeful reminder that it is. Shannon, I just think resilience, when I hear your story, is just, you've chosen to keep moving forward with such intention and such purpose, and allowing that, to be a catalyst to remember Fallon, but also to spread more kindness, just as the example that you saw in her life is so beautiful. Shannon, for someone who's listening today, who may be walking through a season of loss or grief, what would you want them to know about getting through something that you never wanted to have to get through?
I know one of the things, I lost my sister too. So I know my mom experienced child loss and then the loss of her granddaughter. And I remember one of the things she said to me when it happened was, "It's going to be okay." And I remember thinking, this is never going to be okay. And obviously it's not okay what happened, but what I'm saying is, or maybe she said, "You'll be okay." I don't remember the exact wording, but I think to know you'll never be the same, but you will be okay. And that you will, like I said, you will learn a way to carry your loved one with you. And I think, we're all going to experience loss at some point. And so we do have to learn how to carry that loved one with us and know that you will get through it, as dark as it may get. And there's definitely times you just feel like, how am I going to go on living? How am I going to go on getting up every day? But you do. And in time, and when you find those healthy ways, I think, to deal with it, and they are still with you. Like, I feel like you don't really lose them. You lose them in a physical sense, but you don't really lose them. They're still right there. So I think you just have to remind yourself of that. And it can be hard. I'm not going to say it's not hard, and you're going to have days, but I think, like you said, get out and maybe grow some flowers or do something nice for somebody, and that will help.
That's beautiful advice. Shannon, when you imagine Fallon today, what do you hope her legacy teaches the rest of us about how to love each other?
I think just having like that grace and love for one another is not, I think we complicate it. And I think she just naturally walked her, through her life that way, where, she was just a joy to be around, and she made other people feel special. I think that's just the type of person she was. We did a Zoom service for Fallon because it was during COVID. It's 2020 when she passed. I mean, I remember at the time thinking I couldn't do anything. And my husband's like, we have to do this for friends and family, and, people are going to need this. So we did. And at the end, we let people sort of come on to the Zoom if they had something they wanted to share or a story about Fallon. And that was the most meaningful part to me, actually, when we got to hear from, her friends and family, people we, knew years ago when Fallon was a child. And one woman, it stuck out to me. she came on and she said when she heard the news, she was just shocked. And she was a nurse. And she said that her daughter and Fallon went to elementary school together. She said she remembers Fallon. She goes, it wasn't like we stayed close. And she goes, her daughter and Fallon weren't good friends. But she said, I remember when she was having a hard time in school, Fallon was one of the few people that was like nice to her and, befriended her and was kind to her at school. And I just thought, wow. So she would have been probably like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years old. And even at that age, she was just a kind person that made people feel seen and heard and comfortable. And I think, she even said, I knew she'd grow up to be such a wonderful person because even at that age, like she knew what was important. So I just think I was so lucky to have been her mom and that I was allowed to have her for as long as I did. Would have I loved to have her much longer? Of course, they're not supposed to go before we do. Like I said, I like to think that she got to live some really good, happy years and that she enjoyed her life while she was here. And I like to think that she's experiencing a new existence, and I like to think that she was called to a higher purpose and that she's serving that purpose now. And I know she's helped me become better. I think most people that knew her are definitely better for it.
Well, and I think just a picture, like the ripples of kindness that are moving through the Fallon Morris Foundation now, and even, through those who are listening in today and get to hear her story and get to carry those tender seeds of kindness in their heart now as well. Can you share with us just a little bit about what's ahead for the Fallon Morris Foundation and ways that anyone listening could get more connected or learn more, be a part of the work that you're doing?
Well, we do have a website, sourcegrey.com, which is SOEURSGREY.com. And if you look up the Fallon Morris Foundation, you should be able to find it that way too. But we list on there a lot of different things that we are doing and trying to do. We do a couple scholarship. We do a chicken soup program with Penn State University where it's through the Hillel. And if there's a sick student, they can have free chicken soup delivered to them at no cost. And I just thought that seemed sort of, just such a natural way, a wholesome, like it just seemed like Fallon to me, like a wholesome way to share an act of kindness. Some of the other things, we're doing Kindness and Mindfulness Fund with her sorority that she was in at Penn State. There's a lot of different things that we do a free coffee day on Fallon's birthday. Fallon, like most young people, loved iced coffee. So she was always drinking. You could always see her with a coffee in her hand. I remember on her birthday, I wanted to do something special. And I was thinking, I know people like sometimes they'll buy a cake and, donate it to somebody. And I was thinking, well, Fallon liked coffee. So I went to one of the local coffee shops and I said, could I do a gift card and you give out free coffees throughout the day? So I've been doing that every year on her birthday for the last 5 years, which is really nice. And I think people enjoy that. And I enjoy see people getting the free coffee. And then he said, the owner of the coffee shop actually said some people will add to it. Like they'll add to the gift card and say, oh, let's keep it going. Yes. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as like a free cup of coffee or, like you said, free flowers. And so that's some of the things we do. And I would love to continue and grow. I'm always coming up with these like sometimes crazy ideas, but if it speaks to me, I just go with it. I don't over question things anymore. I just think, well, there's a reason I might have thought about that. Like, well, even talking to you, reaching out to you about your growing kindness, and how I was inspired by that. I feel like I don't overthink it anymore, where before I might not have, but it's like now I'm thinking, well, there must be a reason I thought about that, whether it's Fallon or, I figured there's a reason it came to my mind. So I try to follow through with it.
Truly trusting. I think there's a lot of beauty in that. And I think that is, like you said, none of us know the days that we have. And so let's use them wisely and let's use them for good. And, but also a part of that is trusting that like when our heart's leading us, then we follow what that prompting is. So I will make sure, Shannon, that we connect in the show notes, the links to the Fallon Morris Foundation We can also, be sharing the link for the children's book that you wrote in memory of Fallon. I think it's a beautifully inspiring story, for parents listening, grandparents listening, teachers. It's a beautiful tool for teaching empathy and kindness. So we'll make sure that those things are linked in the show notes so that anyone listening now could continue, to connect with Fallon's story and with her legacy, through those things. I want to thank you for holding space and sharing with us today. I think that your willingness to share your story is going to be an opportunity for someone listening today who may be navigating through grief themselves, that is going to hold out a reminder of hope and a purpose for the beautiful ways that we can carry on the memories of those we love, and the ways that we can allow even the hardest things can result in beautiful opportunity for our own growth and for our opportunity to spread kindness and bring people together. So thank you for sharing with me and with us all. It is a very tender story, and I want you to know that we're holding it closely and with tenderness.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you allowing me to tell Fallon's story. And hopefully, people will know that they can get through some of the most terrible things and, be okay and just maybe hopefully, do something kind for somebody. And I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I agree. I love that what you shared, that it's a beautiful way to bring healing into our lives, but then also to spread kindness when we allow those things to move us into action and service. Shannon, every episode we end with the same question. And I think it's a reminder to us all that even the very smallest things can have a tremendous impact in someone's life. And so the question is, what is one small kind thing that someone has once done for you that you still carry in your heart today?
I thought about this, and I've had so many people, so many friends step up when I need anything at all, that have helped me on different projects that I've done for Fallon. But the one thing and the one person would be Fallon, the grace and love she gave me that I carry with me every day and everything I do. So I would say that's it. And I know that's not a small thing, that's a big thing, but it's it's the small things that do matter that are the big things. So yeah, I would say the grace and love that Fallon still gives me each day.
Thank you so much for listening to the Growing Kindness podcast. It means the world that you take the time to be here. Every time you show up, every time you listen in, community grows. If today's episode encouraged you, there are a few simple ways to keep growing kindness with us. First, you can join the team. When you become a Growing Kindness gardener, you link arms with like-minded, like-hearted people from all around the world who believe that small acts of kindness really do make a big difference. As a gardener, you'll receive access to resources, inspiration, and connection to help you grow and give flowers as acts of kindness in your corner of the world. It's free to join. Another way to get involved is to become a donor. This podcast is made possible by the generosity of our donors, kind-hearted people who believe, just like you, that stories of goodness are worth sharing. If you'd like to help us share more stories just like today's, visit growingkindnessproject.org/donate to make a gift and keep kindness blooming. We'd love to stay connected with you. You can sign up for our newsletter or find us on Instagram at Growing Kindness Project. We'd love to keep in touch and cheer you on as you grow kindness in your community. And finally, if this episode touched your heart, would you share it with a friend? It's one of the simplest ways to spread kindness today. I'm so grateful you're here. Until next time, keep growing kindness, one bloom at a time.